The Pomonal Recovery Podcast acknowledges the traditional owners of the land on which the people of Pomonal live and work, the Jabberong and Eastern Maar peoples, and recognise their connection to the land and the waterways. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. Welcome to the Pomonal Recovery Podcast, where our mission is to provide an ongoing platform to continue the work of telling our stories. The stories that we need to hear. The stories about our courage. The stories about our hopes. And the stories about our fears too. In short, this podcast aims to tell the stories that will help the people in this already remarkable town to get even closer to each other. It's a podcast where we can both celebrate our achievements and grieve about our losses. The podcast will hopefully become a forum full of helpful information and a tool for breaking down the barriers that sometimes divide us. I'm James Laidler, your host. On behalf of the Pomonal Community Resilience Group, I give you episode 4, a conversation with Anthony, Emmanuel Plain and Bill Plain. So welcome Anthony and Bill to the podcast. It's really great to have you here.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, so maybe we can start just by talking a little about who you are and when you came to Pomonal, some of that background and why you chose to come to the town.
We moved here mid-November 2022 for Bill's work, and previously we'd been living on Phillip Island and South Gippsland area for about 17 years. And there was, with COVID came a lack of insecurity with work and housing. So we really were looking for somewhere that we could have some security, and the job came up in the Grampians for Bill, and so we've moved out this way. My background is a therapist, so I'm an expressive therapist. I've mainly worked in schools and community health services and private practice, amongst many other things.
Well, my coming here was really interesting. It was a bit of a dive into the deep end. Our coming here, sorry. It was a bit of a dive into the deep end. And yes, as Anthony was saying, it was about greater job security. My roles in Parks Victoria had been contracted positions up until that point. And I'd started working with them during COVID as well, down at Wilson's Promontory National Park. Yeah, I was looking for more security within that system. I had actually made a big career shift over the last sort of 10 years from being an educator, environmental outdoor educator, and I suppose my work career has now been split into two parts where I've transitioned into a new sector, which has been a long but interesting process. Yeah, and so coming here was a bit of an interesting one, because I'd only really been here in grade 5 at a 3-day school camp. Down around Halls Gap, probably somewhere I could hardly remember it. All I know is that I was subjected to the grade 5 boy bully routine or whatever during my time here, so it wasn't exactly a positive experience to be coming back into this space from. But I had a fair degree of apprehension actually about coming here. I was very happy at Wilson's Promontory National Park working there, but our housing and various other situations were a little bit all over the place. We wanted a stabler base. So we were both pretty excited about the journey, something a bit different. And I kept reflecting on previously probably about 7 months before the shift occurred, we went to Portland and then to the big sandy dunes at the back of Portland. There, I can't remember what that area is called. Oh, Bridgewater Bay. And then we headed north up to Rapleys. I'd never been to Rapleys before. And once you get to the Rapleys area and then you start moving back around towards Melbourne and going back to Gippsland, you go past the Grampians in the south. I looked across, was quite surprised. I didn't realise how big it was and how far it went up to. And it looked pretty cool, to be honest. There was all this sort of rocky stuff going on. And it was dry and very different from Gippsland anyway. And so I was pleasantly surprised when we were driving up with the removalist truck and got to Ararat and drove through Ararat. And then I expected everything to just be dry. I don't know why, and not so vegetated. And the drive from Ararat to Pomonal was beautiful. Like it was this.
I think we just had the flood. Oh, Pomonal, we just had the floods in October, so maybe that's.
So you actually came in sight unseen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. And straight to Pomonal?
No. No, so we were heading to Halls Gap. We'd managed to get a rental, and everyone who I knew here from work or wherever it may be was stunned that we'd actually been able to find a rental in Halls Gap, and a really nice one too. So everything felt like it was falling into place. The job, the rental, etc.
The business even. We have like a online lightweight hiking gear business. So it was just like, if, this is a perfect place to be able to have something like that set up. Yeah. So it was just all the ducks were lining up.
Yeah, it was just, everything was going really, really well. And then that included discovering our dream place at Pomonal, which was pretty, one of those moments when we've had a long journey trying to find somewhere we'd love to live. We very rarely had the moment where we both agreed or felt the same about something. We were walking around or being taken around by the owner, and I tapped Anthony secretly on the back while the owner was walking in front of us, and she turned around and I said, "We have to buy this. This is amazing. This beautiful, over-mature native garden." I was really overwhelmed by it, and
also the landscape architecture, like you were naming, like you're like, this is a blah, blah, blah design. And I'm like, I don't know who that is, but you know what you're talking about.
So we had our cheeky little confirming look at each other that this is part of that falling into place stuff.
Then walk us through, two things. So you're talking about this property and this sort of sense that you're you're inheriting a legacy, that there's a whole history of the place and its design and how it's been built that you're respectful of and pretty excited about, but also then actually finding that place and then coming into the Pomonal community. Can you tell us about, because you've only been here since 2022, is that right?
In the area, but I think we bought the place in May
last year.
Yeah, 2023, and moved in June 2023 after renovations.
We did have a link though. You might want to talk about Anthea. The Anthea story.
So we did know a few people before we came here. So Anthea Nichols has a history with my family, with my sister. She was my sister's supervisor for her thesis, and we also actually, through that connection, the little yellow car that people might see us driving around in, that was Anthea. So we had been to Pomonal before. I didn't remember much.
I hadn't. You had.
I'm sure we both came together. I can't remember. But, so I'd been here before. I remember where Anthea used to live, which I think that was burnt in the 2006 or 2014, one of those fires. And she's since sold it and lives where she is now on Robbins Road. But, yeah, so we've bought that car. So it's like we keep on saying, like, the car has brought us home. Sort of like this.
Didn't want to leave. It wanted to come back. Yeah.
But we knew that she was a very connected, very core part of the community here.
Yeah, she does the newsletter. She's been in the writing group I've been running. She's everywhere.
Yeah.
She's a great writer too. Actually, she writes some great stuff.
And a very beautiful person, and she's always been incredibly generous and warm to us. And we also knew Sue McCapper. I did teach with her a long, long time ago at Phillip Island at Barney's. And Cole, I think he may have been the president of the Kilcunda Bass Football Club, where my son played for a while as well. So I'd met him there too. And so I think one of his kids had gone to the school that I was working in as well. So there was a couple of people we knew directly like that, and then a few indirect people through just our involvement in the outdoor industry sector, who already lived here.
So you had half a foot in the door.
Yeah.
But then you found this place and it connected with you. And then so what happened after that? Like before the fires, and what was your transition into the community?
You discover a place to be, and while you're at work, you only want to be there.
Well, that's a significant thing, yeah. Because that's my experience. Because where you are now in our studio, this place, I just want to be here all the time.
Yeah. It was for me. I think for you too, but in a different way. Like when you talk about you just wanted to be there all the time. Like I was there all the time because I worked from home with the job that I was doing, but. For me, its significance was a healing significance, because we'd started, I will get teary, apologies, it's all good. We'd been doing IVF since 2020, and so I live with some chronic illnesses that affect fertility, and so it was just one of those things of like, if not now, then when? So that was a pretty big deal, especially experiencing COVID, and we actually really enjoyed the lockdowns. We were in a little farmhouse that was, we couldn't believe our luck. It was just amazing. And
this is back in Gippsland.
Yeah, this is back in Gippsland. And so we were really happy to be away from the rest of the world. We didn't care that there were lockdowns because then we could be in our little bubble doing our IVF thing. But then I think the last transfer that we did, there were 6 transfers in total between 2020 and 2023. The last one I think was in March on the long weekend. And that was to have that home with these beautiful gardens, and there was a particular area I'd said to Bill, can I just have this? Usually we have the same idea, but we have different processes. I just said, can I just have one bit where I can just have my process? And so that was my therapeutic garden.
Yeah, but the garden is an expression of people, isn't it? It's very creative. It's like a canvas that you paint on in some ways.
Exactly. And I remember on one of the counselling sessions that I had with the reproductive fertility specialist, they sort of mentioned, because they said, oh, what's your new place like? And I was like, oh, it's got all this garden, blah, blah, blah. And then I described to her the bit that we come out from the dining and living area out into the garden. It's, had these little waterways, these ponds, and it was all very thoughtful, like, the water used to come off the roof to fill the ponds. And she sort of said, oh, it's, really interesting because in some Western cultures, especially, like she said, have you heard of this, like, I think it's a Japanese demigod or a god, I don't know what, but called, I think it's Jizu. And I said, oh, and she described it, and I had actually a little symbol that I used to use in my symbol collection for sand play therapy, and I didn't realise that that's what it was. But it's like the guardian of children or unborn children, and it's usually around waterways that you would find them in Japan. And so, we talked about like having like little Jizu statues by the watercourses and like building that up. And so that was a really significant healing for my future to make peace with the fact that what I felt as my purpose as a human wasn't going to be an eventuality, like it wasn't going to happen. So,
and this was 223. So this is all emerging in the way you're living and the way you see this type of property around you.
Yeah. So spending time. So when we had the walkthrough with the owner, I think we did that once or twice. We did it a few times.
February last year.
Yeah.
And March.
But like we didn't see the house. We just saw the garden and went, we've got to. And then we were like, oh, we should look at the house just to make sure that, it's solid, blah, blah, blah. To have somewhere as your sanctuary, like there was an exhibition recently and I can't for the life of me remember what the artist...
Tama.
Yeah, at Tama Art Gallery in Ararat. And it was about home and what does home mean for you, and about displacement and about homelessness and about the trauma of that, like when there is displacement and homelessness. And
so when was this exhibition that you saw?
it's just closed down now.
Just closed down now.
Yeah, so it was on the last few months.
Wow, so that must have been particularly relevant.
I didn't realise what I was walking into. I just wanted to borrow the toilet.
Yeah.
And got busted.
So for our listeners, Anthony and Bill lost their house in the fire, which we'll get to soon.
So it was a sanctuary, like it really... And I'm sure that everybody, or most people, feel that their home is a sanctuary. Like that's what, and it's a safe place. It's a place that you feel safe, that you can just be yourself. And that's for us. We'd finally found somewhere where we could just be us, and it suited us. Everyone, all of our friends that came from South Gippsland or had known us over the years that came there, were just like, it's you. Like, this place is like they could walk in and just go, and it wasn't because of the belongings or anything like that. We'd had our stuff in storage for years. It was because it resonated and they just like went, you finally found the place. Because it's a bit of a joke, I think, in South Gippsland that like Anthony and Bill are constantly trying to find a place and they still haven't found one, and they've been together for almost 20 years. And like, it's, it's...
Well, it's really interesting you talk so much about the garden, but the house itself, you mentioned before we did the podcast, it was pretty amazing too. Like for a 1976 house built in passive solar design and unheard of things such as heating in the concrete slab. Mm-hmm. Like, can you tell us a bit about the impact of the house too?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it was my first impression, and I think the reason why we were maybe so focused outdoors was because it was very brown inside. and a little bit...
That's the 70s for you.
A little bit dark. Essentially, we were looking at something, a bit preoccupied about termites, actually, from memory, but was to find something solid. And so solidity within that house was really apparent straight away. And the building inspector who came during our a little bit drawn-out process of actually being able to buy the place, it was a very good report. He said this is an exceptional condition for its age. So it had been looked after really well by the two groups that had lived there
by the Stewarts and the Sagos.
Stewarts and the Sagos, yeah. From that perspective, everything was really good. Our first step, though, was to lighten it up inside. And a friend of ours, Matt, he came and helped us learn about and also put up plasterboard and so forth, and then paint it white and really open the space up, which was pretty amazing. And that took about 4 weeks. And that was our first phase, I think, in sort of just making it our home or building familiarity with that indoor space.
Yeah.
And it was really nice also to unpack what had been in storage for a long time. And because we'd moved around so much, we were quite refined with what we had as well. We didn't have tons and tons of things. We were pretty minimalistic or lightweight, like that. Yeah. So everything seemed to go into the space quite well. And then I think the part where it dawned on me the most just how much the space was going to work for us was when we had Anthony's birthday, and Anthony's a Survivor fanatic.
All right.
We had a Survivor birthday party, which went off, by the way. It actually worked. You have ideas like that. Sometimes it's a bit of a flop. It worked. We had a drawer at the end in the dark around all the flames around a fire in the middle of the garden, and they both argued.
So you had little torch fires.
Yep. Bill was Jeff Probst.
I was Jeff Probst. They gave us these... their stories of why they should win, the two that had drawn. So we had a re-vote. It was all very tense and exciting, and there was 10 to 20 people there, varied during the day. And then,
so did anyone get voted out of the party?
Yeah.
It was cutthroat. And then I remember looking back at the house from out and where the fire area was, the classic Survivor scene, because we use Survivor music and everything when we were doing it. But anyway. So I remember looking back and looking at everybody, in the living area, which you could see from out in the garden really easily. You can see the bedroom area, you can see the dining area, because it had big windows on the north side. And it just worked. It just was such a nice place to be with these people. I could see the space being a communal space and easy to move in and out of, not and get in each other's way, but it had a lovely feel to it. And I remember stopping and looking and going, wow, this is going to be really amazing place to be.
I think you could feel the love, not just the love that we had in it, but the love too that and the care that the previous owners had. Right.
That you'd inherited.
Yeah.
I mean, the architectural factors were, I remember when we were actually renovating that first bit, just stunned by how far the winter sun came right in across the whole floor. We'd removed the carpet and we were creating concrete floors and things like you've got here, and it was just exciting that the place could be so easily warm like that. We'd started to arrange for solar that would match the cost, I suppose, of our floor heating. Floor heating, I'd never had it before. It blew me away. It was just amazing heat, especially if you've got allergies and things like that. It's a beautiful heat to be around, but expensive.
Yeah, cedar lined walls, which were great for termites. Yeah. Not so good for fires.
But they're trendy at the moment. Well,
Are they? We were trendy.
So the picture I'm getting is, two people have been together for a long time, struggling to find their perfect place in Gippsland. You come here and you fall in love with it. Place you find the perfect house, you invest in that house, you have some really positive experiences there. And then your body, heart's ripped out of your chest when the fires come through.
Yeah.
So maybe we should turn to that and just, if you're willing, and you don't have to be, but can you talk us through maybe the day and then in the aftermath of that experience, because yours is a complicated story, because I think your house didn't burn down straight away. But I'll just give it to you.
The day before, so the Monday, so Bill working with parks, his role is communication.
Well, my role on that day, well, it's actually the day before.
Yeah, it was the day before.
So we're aware that the day before what kind of day it's going to rated as. So it was rated as catastrophic in the northern half of the park. And if it's rated that in the northern half of the park, it's rated that for the whole park. So we applied catastrophic to the entire park. And so the day before, my role is, putting together the signage and the various bits of messaging that need to go out to websites, etc., local community, all our stakeholders and so forth. And that was a very, very busy day. The next day, my role was to, with another ranger, was to drive through the park and evacuate the central corridor, or to remove the people that shouldn't have been there in the first place, who weren't aware of it being catastrophic. We had rangers go out on Monday afternoon as well to speak to people. And so, I started the day. We were up at Wonderland in that early morning phase, Wonderland car park, around about 9 o'clock, when we heard that lightning above Pomonal and on the Sarah Range, and the light rain, etc., which I think a lot of people have described that morning in terms of it being cool but a little bit unpredictable. And so I remember listening to it and going, oh, that's directly above Pomonal in my head, and thinking, at that point. But with it raining and being overcast, etc., I was alerted, but I wasn't on high alert.
You're also doing your job.
I was doing my job, yeah. We were doing
So that's a really hard situation. So, and then the fire unfolds and you're still in your job, or did
I wasn't aware that anything unfolded. I was just aware that I heard dry lightning, potentially. That was about it. Yeah, we cleared out that car park and went up to Sundial and made our way. There's a central corridor route. You sort of go through the main touristy areas out to Baroka, then back down, and then eventually to Mackenzie Falls. It is an important part of the story because it was a frustrating process, because the people, it's a great example of people either not being in tune or not following really clear signage and not taking it seriously. Yeah, we basically headed back to Halls Gap, to our depot, and then I walked into the depot and we've got a large screen there which was showing what was happening up on the ridgeline with the fire that was starting to progress. At that stage, to be honest, it looked like a little bonfire. It really did not sink into my head how much it could take off. I was confident that we had enough aircraft, etc., dropping water and so forth on it, that it would be contained. I still felt that things would be contained. So, so I was assessing that and then giving her information in regards to, what's the Vic Emergency app telling you now? Because I had to put through that information that I'd collated in the morning, and normally we would type that through. And as I sat there, and then the team of people got sent out to Pomonal, and that's when my head went, oh, no, this is moving now. This is shifted, and I went, oh, I better get down to the office and type that stuff and get it through, and then get out. And by that stage, my perception was that Anthony was already evacuating. And I remember going to the office in Halls Gap and sitting there, and it was the first time I had the thought, wow, should I be grabbing extra things here, because this might not be here tomorrow, because there was a little fire up at Sundial as well, which they just got under control from memory. And I tried to type and I couldn't think, and so I just rang, I don't know whether it was my team leader or the Area Chief Ranger, I can't remember, and said, hey, are you okay if I just verbally, Area Chief Ranger, if I just verbally give this to you, because I can't type right now. And so he took that information on verbally, and then by the time I headed out to potentially go down to Pomonal, I got to the intersection of the caravan park and the turn off down to Pomonal and Ararat Road, and there was just billows of smoke, like it was huge. And so I just went, you can't go, Anthony's out, that's all good.
By that stage I was out.
I'm safe, I'm not going...
So you left by that stage, yeah.
I'm safe, I'm not going in that zone. It's probably 2:30, I would say.
So what prompted you to move, Anthony, and what was going on in the street and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so street, actually, I couldn't hear much noise outside, except for the storm. The night before, Bill had said, pack the car just as an emergency. So, that morning on Tuesday morning, he threw some clothes on the bed. He's like, that'll do. And I'm like, okay, we've got a camper van. So it's usually kitted out. So I was, once Bill left, The dog was going mental. Like, I've never seen the dog. This is before the storm. On our side, the Pomonal side, it was blue sky. Between 9 and 10, I spotted the storm cloud, the storm cell, just behind us. So we're in Wildflower Drive. So it was behind the range, so in Halls Gap area. Witnessed the storm and went, oh, that's okay. And then it wasn't long after there was 5 planes, and all this time, like, I'm on the phone to my family in Melbourne. They're just like, because that was the day as well for Victoria. There was those huge winds that took out a whole lot of houses' power, all that kind of stuff. So, you know, they're just like, have you got wind there? I'm like, no, actually, there was just like one storm cell and it's fine. Everything's cool here. Like, I said, it's going to pick up later in the day, but it's fine. I'm just packing and getting ready to go. And the dog was still going mental. I'm trying to pack. Like getting, the 10, 15 litre drums of water to put them in the van because I didn't know what would be driving through. Our evacuation plan was to go to Port Fairy because I didn't want to hang around inland on a hot day. I was like, if it's going to be hot, screw that, I'm going
Port
to the beach.
Fairy's a nice place to be, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So we're packing to go, and we didn't... even though when we bought here we knew what we were buying into, obviously the fire happened a bit earlier than what we expected, but we'd always like known how to pack the car and like have a go bag ready, all that kind of stuff. So I was trying to get everything. Bill had also said that morning, do you think we should take some photo albums? And this is my greatest regret, is that like there were things that I was looking, and I said, no, we're coming home, it's fine. So there were things that were, you know, like baby photos of Jericho, like our son, and, heirloom rugs that my grandmother had woven in the village because she was or my drum kit. I'd always said that I'd take my drum kit. And I was like, then weighing up, because we'd swapped cars for the day. So usually Bill takes the van to work and I have the gets, and we'd swapped because we knew that we might need the van to go.
Yep.
So therefore I need to pack stuff. And then I was like, oh, but what happens if Bill doesn't join me? What happens? So, and then I've got a drum kit, but I still have to sleep in the van because we hadn't planned on staying anywhere except for a caravan park.
Yeah.
So packing. Intuition was telling me to take certain things, and then my rational mind was going, you're evacuating. It's not practical to take the Thermomix. It's not practical to take the rugs or the drum kit. Just pack the pillows, sleeping gear, enough clothes for a week, the water in case you get stuck on a road and you have to, do stuff, all the dog food, the dog beds, take all that kind of stuff. Food, and stuff to use as a kitchen in the van. The only other time I've ever had that, it was like this screaming sensation inside. It's the only time. I used to teach a lot of, I used to go to school groups and do a lot of workshops about anxiety and fight or flight response. And I'd only ever experienced this fight or flight in this kind of way once before, and it was on Phillip Island. We were surfing, and I usually get quite paranoid when I'm in the surf because I think I see a shark or whatever else anyway. And it's just my imagination because I don't like being out in deep water, but I love surfing. So I was out one time, or we were out in the water one time, this is many years ago, and the body sensation was, get out of the water, you're not safe, get out, get out, get out. Which is the same feeling that I had on the Tuesday of the fire.
Yep.
And I looked around and I was like, there's nothing in the water, you're safe, stop being a drama queen and just continue doing what you're doing. And then 10 minutes later, I looked out the back of the water and noticed these seagulls circling and this tail thrashing around in the water, feeding on a school of fish, and it was a shark. And I just thought that was one of the biggest insights I've ever had about our bodies. And we might not, we're connected to everything. Like, we don't, like, when our intuition speaks, we don't have to understand it, but to follow it is what is the most, what I'm feeling is the most important
That's pretty
thing.
sound advice, most people would say, yeah.
Yeah. And that was the same sensation I was getting on Tuesday, was I'm rational, I can see stuff. I can't see smoke at this stage where we are. Actually, I don't think I could see smoke at all. It wasn't until I got to the Pomonal store and saw the first bit of smoke as I was driving out. But just that body sensation of, which was driving me to then call Bill every half an hour or text him on his work phone, which I don't normally do, and just go, can I go? Can I go? And he's just like, what does the Vic app say? And I'm like, it's saying this, but can I go because something doesn't feel right? And the dog's going mental. And, before leaving, saying a little blessing for the house and then just hoping it's going to, I was pretty confident because we had a pretty solid house. Like, it was double brick. The way that everything was laid out, I may have forgotten to remove a few things from the veranda, like plastic things, but I'm just like, there's only, and tables and stuff, but there's only so much I can do by myself as well. But I was pretty confident that we'd be coming back, and then I left with the dog, went to the store. Actually, before that, I think I'd contacted Anthea just to sort of see what she was doing. And I don't think I was quite worried about her. So I just drove around to her place just before I left. When I drove out on the street, it was quiet. So I just made an assumption that everyone else had left because I couldn't see cars. I couldn't hear anyone. So it's only now through, talking with people in the community, sort of like knowing what times they left and sort of piecing those pieces of the puzzle together. But and at the time that I was there with Anthea, one of our neighbours had called her to say that they were going as well, and so Anthea went with them. So I felt better about that. And then went to the store just to let them know where I was going and where Bill would be hopefully joining me.
So where did you end up going?
We did go to Port Fairy.
Okay. Yep.
And the aim was, as I said, to stay in a caravan park somewhere. On the way, one of our friends must have gotten hold of Bill and found out we're going to Port Fairy and said, do you have anywhere to stay there? And I said, no, just caravan park. She said, I've got friends you can stay with. I'll send you the address. So that's where we ended up. And I can't quite remember what I know. I think I left Pomonal somewhere around 1:30. And then, so maybe 3:30ish or 3, I must have arrived in Port Fairy. It was a very hot drive, and at some point I did panic because all the traffic was going, like I was the only one driving towards Port Fairy and everyone else is going towards Pomonal, but it wasn't, they were just like normal. I don't know who they were, but so I was like, am I going the wrong way? And it's just getting hotter and hotter and hotter, and my mind starts doing the worst case scenario stuff, but got there safely. It was fine. Took the dog for a walk. By the time I came back, Bill had arrived as well.
Yep.
The place that we had landed, we didn't realise that these friends of friends were actually station masters for, I don't know if it's CFA or some sort of fire authority. Fire authority. And they respectfully asked, if you want to, we can show you, like he's got screens in his home for when he works from home.
Yep.
And so he said, if you want to, you can have a look just to sort of, but you don't have to. And so, I think it was mainly he was showing you because of, your work, and you'd had access to stuff once you got back.
It's just where the services are. Where is everybody in that?
And so from that, you can sort of piece together exactly where the fires are and what's moving. How bad it is.
Where the tankers are. And,
so we could see like 3 tankers on our property and we were like, we're sweet.
Yeah.
And the guy said, or it could be a worst case scenario. But
given that unexpected situation, we did have a conversation with him and say we can't sit and watch this for 4 hours.
No,
that was not.
That makes sense.
We made a
and so
we discussed how we broke it up and just looked at it every 2 hours for 10 minutes or so, and then went to bed at sort of 10, 11.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so initially the next day, you found out originally that the house had survived. Is that right?
Yeah, we were pretty confident that the house had survived. And, there's always, like, people wanting to check in or whatever, and so we were pretty confident that the house had survived. And then it wasn't until... but I remember reading maybe on, like, a Facebook group, and it might have even been Matt Venn had written on a post somewhere, please just make sure that you wait for the official phone call, which is the appropriate thing to do. And it's appropriate for many reasons. It's a good thing to have in place. And so we were quite shocked when we got an official phone call at around, I think, was it 1 o'clock or 1 o'clock, saying... Bill got the phone call saying, your house isn't there. And I could say, I didn't know who Bill was talking to on the phone, but I could see he was just like, Bill's not very forthright. Like, he's not.
So Bill, what was that phone call like to receive?
It was pretty devastating. Yeah. And from that point, because we were just going to hang around in Port Fairy until Bill either had to go back for work or until it was safe to go back into the town.
So your life has just changed dramatically,
Yeah.
and you don't even know where you fit in now.
Yeah, because we'd been planning. We were like, okay, how can we help the rest of the community? We've got spare rooms for emergency accommodation for people. We've got, if we need to set something up in the yard, like it's a big property, or if people want to put caravans there, like they can do that. We weren't planning for people to have to help us.
Yeah. So you were getting ready to roll up your sleeves and get stuck in, and then bang, this is the reality.
Yeah, and so then it was just... Yeah, so then we drove back to... we looked at when the community meeting that I think we're going to be, and we figured that because of the time frames that we received the news and how long it would take to drive back, that the meeting that we could make would be the one in Stawell at the emergency hub. So we just packed everything up.
It was like going to gear again. It was almost like the day before when we were getting out of there.
Yeah.
Except we're going back in.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like. And really deep emotions around it. I remember floating through. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be in the Grampians. I want to go back to the coast where I'm safe from this sort of stuff, and this sort of mental overreaction. In terms of the fight response. I suppose,
then the first 12 hours feels like, we're out of here, we're leaving. And I was like, okay, give it 24 to 48 hours.
Yeah.
Just a whole lot of stuff went computed in my brain, which maybe I hadn't computed with hard enough. I thought anyway, like, this fire here, then this fire here, and I was just in an accelerated state of mind, really, around it. And then you had this period of time at Port Fairy where it was walking the dog on the beach and relaxing, and it being 21 degrees and a southerly breeze. It was this odd...
How can you make sense of that? And people just going about their normal life. While yours has been shattered.
Why did I try and buy in that hardware shop?
I don't know.
We had to go to a hardware shop or something.
So the emotional landscape you're in, so sometimes it's really heightened.
It was, yeah.
And down as what, like, were you oscillating, or was it...
I went in, because Bill had received the news, so, it floored him, and because we were so confident that the house was still there, I hope it's okay for me to say, you just kind of like went into a shutdown mode, like you needed to...
Yeah.
Well, like, yeah. And I should also say too, if we had gone to the Stawell Emergency Relief Centre, I don't think that would have been the right thing for us. Some people find it really comforting to be around other people. We need to remove ourselves so that we can process.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah. And I think for the podcast and for the town, that's one of the things we've been talking about, is that people react in different ways, and we have to respect those different aspects of people.
Yeah.
That's just being human.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think getting to the evacuation centre for me was was harder than the phone call.
Wow.
Yeah, you didn't come in, like, you didn't even see the...
I walked in and it was
walk
still
out again.
hot and whatever and uncomfortable and, a lot going on and so forth, but I walked in and there's just people everywhere, and I saw the desk that we go to say, hi, we're here, do we write our names down or whatever it may be, emergency services, and I looked at the person there and she looked at me and she said, could you give me your name, please? And I just walked out. I really just collapsed around that.
Well, it's one thing to have grief by yourself, but then to walk into a place where there's shared grief. I mean, that's and no one can be ready for that. I was in East Timor and I was on a film set where they had massacres and stuff, and there were parents of people who had lost their kids, massacres, old women, and we did this scene where they were remembering a massacre, and they fully embodied it, and they were sharing their grief together. It wasn't just one woman crying; it was a whole heap of women, and it just undid me, and so it makes me think of you, like, God, you're going through that, and bang, the shared grief.
So I walked out and got my shit together, basically, over a period of time, and I think for me also there was an element of, I don't know these people yet, and so I did feel, Anthea's side of felt...
I'm probably more ingratiated in the community than what... Like, Bill's community is the parks community, because, he'll go there to work and then he comes home and then he's home. Whereas, like...
So it was
I'm more in
quite...
You've invested more into the community at that stage, yeah.
So it was quite, really overwhelming. It was the reality of the situation, and then walking around the corner and seeing Prue Daly, who works at Parks Victoria, who was doing the fire comms and things at that meeting, and she got me. She got the flood.
Yeah.
Of tears. So
Wow.
Thanks, Prue.
Yeah, thank you, Prue, and thanks for all those people who have been there for others in those moments that Bill's experienced, and I know there would be a heap of you, and we need to keep doing that for each other. So I suppose that it's hard to get my head around what's happened to you, but what...
I also mentioned that
Yep.
at that meeting, there was a couple of things that stood out, and one was I think you just interviewed events, and so Matilda in particular, who they spoke about in that podcast, was incredibly supportive. It was nice to just sit and have a normal conversation over dinner and switch off a bit from what was going on, and our dog had calmed down a bit by then. He's still a puppy, and then Auntie brought over the CFA district command.
He was the incident commander.
From Horsham, Chris, I think.
No. I think
anyway.
it was Mark. I don't know. Sorry.
And he explained how the house had survived the first fire front, and then early in the morning, conditions had changed and people had to be moved to safer places, and somehow an embers got into the house in the early morning, so probably between 3 and 6. That's when it's actually gone. So there's some people that have worked extremely hard in very dangerous conditions to try to save that house, and we're very grateful for their efforts.
I think it affects them too. Like, when we've had conversations with them afterwards, like, the people who are fighting and defending, like, they invest a lot of their energy, and at the time it's like, I mean, I've never defended a fire, I have no idea, so I'm just going to assume here that there's like a lot of adrenaline, that there's a lot of trying to keep your head straight, but also there must be emotion there somewhere, that they're probably, however that's being channeled at the time, but, there would have been people from Bill's work, I'm assuming, defending our home.
Yeah, there were quite a few people whose chose to stay and defend.
Yeah, and they did a fantastic
They
job.
did, and the CFA firefighters and all the ones that came in, it's remarkable. People driving trucks and fighting fires while their own houses are burnt down.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think there was, there was one, there were a few park staff that were affected, either losing sheds or losing a house that was like in the process of, they just bought it, or they were in the process of buying it. I think it was in settlement period, or who came really close, like, had other parts of their property affected. But I think we might have been the only ones that actually lost their home, like that we were living in.
So
it would have been emotional for them as well.
So one of my questions I do have for you then, and Anthony, particularly you here, because you've been so active in the hub, doing work and giving back to the community. In the context of what you've gone through, how do you find the energy for that?
So my sister said something to me early on, I think in the first 2 months, 1 month, I don't know. She said, because I'm normally such a giver, and she said, you've got to make sure that you look after yourself. And I said, I've done nothing for anyone else. Like, it's only been since the drumming has started. I've been in complete shutdown.
So for those listening, Anthony runs a drumming class on
workshop. Let's not call it a class. They don't
I've heard it a few times. It's before the creative writing workshop, and it's cool to listen to you guys. And you do. It's not just drumming. You move your bodies as well, and you do circle work and sort of stuff. Yeah. So go on. So your sister and
so I wasn't capable. Like the first couple of weeks or so, where we had to sort out our own finances and mortgages, all that kind of stuff. I was in task mode, that's what I call it, and I was switched on and I was able to go through the list and do things. And then at some point I said to Bill, I can't anymore, and Bill took over, and I left my job. I've not been able to function. I haven't been at work. So it's only really been, so when I said yes to doing the drumming, when I was approached to run that, I still I definitely was not in a good headspace. I said yes in the hope of, because it was still a fair way off, that I would be better by that time and I would be able to give. So I haven't been able to give from a well of nothing. I've had to actually completely withdraw and only sort of like be in certain places at certain times. Like we had a pop-up store that we were running with our lightweight hiking gear in Halls Gap since November, and I've had to lessen the hours there to just so that I can function for me and Bill and Remy in a daily capacity.
But it's good that you can recognise that need in yourself and respond to it. That's really positive. But still managing to give and
I
also had some friends of ours who were in the Malakuta fires, and they rang us fairly quickly. The recent Malakuta fires. They rang us fairly quickly on hearing about up here, and the one thing that Joe and Devon said to us was to stay close to your community.
Yeah.
So we've really taken that on because their experience was.
Yeah, and so when we started the discussion, you'd come from Gippsland and recently moved, and has your experience of the fire, one of the, out of this whole horror show, one of the benefits is that you feel more enmeshed in the community now, like known and embraced and that sort of thing?
We felt pretty... What were you going to say?
I'm just going to say...
Because I'm
a bit more of a slow mover. I don't know, getting used to places and settling in and getting to know people. I let it sort of just flow organically. So the organicness is sped up a bit. I did find a lot of the community things that were occurring straight after the fire amazing, but at the same time it was a bit too much for me.
Yeah.
So I was a bit selective in the process around that in terms of measuring, I suppose, internally where I was at and what ready for. But at the same time, it's really helped me understand why we live here.
Yeah. I completely get what you're saying. I imagine a lot of other people had that sort of experience. Had that experience too.
It's an extraordinary community, and we've lived in a few communities.
Yeah.
Lived in a lot of communities.
So
Yeah, and my partner and I, that's our experience. It's been remarkable.
And I think too, with
so that was the yes, we're going to rebuild moment.
Yeah.
After
So after the initial
Like
we are
when-
going to the sea, all of a sudden it's well, not all of a sudden it's you've gradually got your head around the fact that this is your home, and I assume that rebuilding also would be a lot of consideration about fire
yes,
and what that means.
yeah, and I think too with the community stuff, like because we have, decided to stay and rebuild, like we're the next lot of people, like we're part of that next lot of people that are coming through, you know what I mean? And so like we need to invest. We need to, so, doing the things like the drumming or, in whatever other ways that we're involved, like...
Just a bit of a quick rewind, we've always been community involved. It's just a part of our fabric. That's part of the way we are. It's what we value. So...
so there's some sort of...
Yeah.
philosophy behind it that you share, and you're on the same page with.
Yeah. Definitely.
Sounds something like the small revolution, something like that, is it?
Well, yeah. No, you also have to. I'm probably more careful of how much energy I invest nowadays. But,
I like to spread myself thin.
Yeah, my big investment I think was in my 20s actually, which is a bit unusual to be involved in those kind of groups. But I was very involved in my 20s, and slowly since then I've been a bit more hermit-like every now and again.
Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah.
But the house rebuild stuff, like definitely, it's now about, like we still have to get our BAL assessment done, so with the bushfire consultant, but it will very much be around what makes us feel safe. So these are my criteria anyway. What makes me feel safe? So sometimes Bill goes, oh, we'll do this. I'm like, we're not doing that because I don't feel safe and I don't want to be here if that's how that's going to look. It needs to be livable. We are not, like the house as it was prior to the fires was massive. It was probably more than, like we would probably never build anything that big. So it has to be livable. But doesn't have to be what it was.
Well, you did say you didn't have much stuff, and that's the way you live. So makes sense.
Yeah. But it also needs to. We'd like to have it fit with sustainable principles and that kind of stuff. So it's and all within a budget.
Yeah, and you've got to find a builder who's going to come on board with that sort of philosophy. Yeah.
So
is the insurance been okay? No comment.
The insurance, I can probably speak more. I can probably speak more to this than Bill can. Sorry, just flicking the lights.
Yeah, that's all right. And you don't have to talk about these things.
No, I think this is a valuable thing for all of us in the community because everyone's had different experiences, and some people who would have been paid out early or whatever, the advice that we were given. I have relatives who work in insurance, but for the Master Builders Association, and so high up, so they're not like a person that would be a case manager or something like that. They're, and so they advise. So this is for anyone else in the future.
Yep.
Our advice was to don't tell them that you want to cash out payments straight away because they will try and lowball you. Instead, go through the process, which is annoying, but go through the process of saying you want to rebuild like for like, and then eventually they will come to their senses and realise that, through that process, you deserve to have the full amount. Now, some people, it sounds like, have been really lucky and just gotten their full amount without having to go through, like, playing any games. Bill and I don't like to play games unless it's Survivor, but we don't or Bananagrams. And even then we're quite competitive, but we don't like to play games. Like, it's a life thing. We just prefer to call it for what it is. But so that process.
So the insurance companies like that competitor on Survivor you all hate when you want him to get voted off.
Yes, really, yes.
Who's got 5 idols?
5 idols. He's got everything.
You just can't get rid of them.
And he's going to screw everyone over.
That's right. Yeah. And look, we were called on the day, I was called on the day of the fire by our insurance company, as were the other people who I think also had their insurance with the same company, to ask if we were okay. Now, some people that I've told that to are like, that's really sweet. And then I've only met 2 other people who have gone, why do they need to know if I'm safe?
Yeah, and isn't it like the hard reality is that people work in insurance, they're actually taught to use empathy as a tool.
Exactly. So
to be skeptical.
Exactly. So where we can't complain about the money, like we've been paid out the right amount, we've been, everything's been fine. We were really lucky that we bought the house when we did, because we were insured for a decent amount, and it still won't be enough to if we were to rebuild like for like, we're still short by a significant amount
because of the bail requirements and stuff like that.
Exactly. So, but this, this was something that I've been reading articles lately that happened for Malakuta as well. And, previous fires as well. So I think that my main thing with the insurance, and this is the feedback that I'll be providing them, is the communication was pretty poor. And we only got 1 building quote before they decided to pay us out. And, so just, and I feel that their practices need to be not have empathy used as like a tool so that they can still do their business of money. They need to have trauma-informed practice, which is a very different thing about how you use empathy and what empathy is.
People need to be held more through the process.
Yeah.
There
needs to be transparency.
Not through a perspective of we'll just do everything for you. It's all right. We've got it all covered. No worries. There's a climate at the moment where there's uneasiness around insurance, and so clarity is needed, and confidence does need to be made. Like, relationships do have to be built, and honesty needs to be part of that. They need to nurture that idea that people trauma affected need to be nurtured, need to be managed in a way which is appropriate.
It's not like the people who are losing their houses are wanting to take advantage of the situation. They just want what's fair. That's where they're at. The insurers need to be on that same page, that they need to give what is fair.
Yeah.
And I thought that's what was. I think in a lot of their headspaces, they think that it's great, we're managing this for you. You don't have to think about it. It's okay. It's a very typical way, I would say, of the norm now, and how that happens in a lot of cases with certain things. The thing about the bushfire factor and other disasters is, what kind of frequency are these things going to start to happen for in the future? Like, we were really, we're in an unknown space here. And it's not like this necessarily going to be these one-off things that happen whatever, and we're not quite prepared, we're not sure where to go with that, or where was the document on that kind of thing. It'll be, no, we know how to manage this, we've been here before, we've learnt from that experience, these people need to be looked after, and that includes not just insurance companies, banks, etc.
That's my other big gripe, is banks.
And and I think the other thing not acknowledged through that process is the increased costs of living, increased costs of building materials and so forth, all play a role in all of this. And so you've already got people traumatised who are being stressed even further, and they need to be. The community can look after things, and they're doing a beautiful job.
Yeah, we'd be stuffed if it wasn't the resilience group doing what they were doing, and other members of the community.
Absolutely.
Like, I don't like this. This could have easily ended up being another Malakuta. And I think the thing that I've noticed the most out of this experience is the feeling of lack of control So lack of control because your, home is gone, but also your community. It's not just you. There's a whole range of people. So it's who are needing a lot of help at the same time, whether they want the help or not. Everybody needs assistance. You're not in control of your emotions. So it's, I think we sort of said to you earlier, we might be triggered through this conversation. We don't know. We don't know what will trigger us. It's this constant up and down. I remember at some stage, I think it might have been around the 6 to 8 week mark, the collective depression. I know that I experienced depression, and there were quite a few other people that I was speaking with as well, and, they were experiencing classic telltale signs of depression. And I feel like I've come out of that now, or I've normalised it. Who knows? But I think I've come out of it. But it's all of these things signal to a lack of control of your situation. And so to then have external agencies who don't understand the process of that we need to get a BAL statement before we can tell you how we're going to rebuild. Because these are some of the stupid questions we're being asked is, okay, so have you got a builder? It's no, because I need a BAL. Oh, what's that? It's please have an understanding of the process so that I don't have to explain the process to you while I'm,
insurers would know this stuff.
Yeah, trauma. So that's my, thing that I'll be following up with that, there needs to be, don't call yourself a hardship team if you don't have a folder somewhere or you haven't had the training that actually says this is the process and these are some of the things that people might be experiencing, because I can hear you say that we're here for you and we're just going to try and make this right for you, but your actions are saying completely different things.
Yeah, really hopeful that's some really helpful advice and things to think about with our journeys ahead with insurers.
And again, people might have different experiences too.
Yeah.
Can I just mention...
Yeah, well, I was going to say, we'll probably bring things to a close, but are there any last things that you want to put out there?
Yeah, I really wanted to say that process post-fire has been an interesting process in many regards. We have been, and there's been, people hold us through that. In particular, our movement after the stool evacuation centre. We found ourselves at a home of some friends in Stool, and then we found ourselves after that at Dulce Cabins with Janine, who owns Dulce Cabins, and she looked after us up to Easter in that space. So she has a house in Horsham, but she also has a house at Dulce Cabins in the outskirts of Falls Gap. And it was a beautiful place to stay, and it was amazing for our dog to be in that environment, a quiet, calm environment rather than Stool, which we were very grateful for where we'd stayed there. It was just a bit too noisy for us. We needed to be somewhere.
It's too much for the dog.
Too much going on, we were reading the environment as well, and she was wonderful. It went from just a couple of days to, I'll stay a couple more weeks, it's all right. And then, we formed a really amazing friendship with her now, which is hopefully will be ongoing and things. So it's been a really nice connection to make. And then from that, we've now found ourselves out at a farmhouse on Pomonal East Road. And Mel, the owner, we had met her earlier in the piece, just after the fire actually. She had had a chat with us and helped us out a lot with something right after the fire. And the circumstance where that happened, she really reached out to help us, and we hadn't forgotten that. She hadn't forgotten us, and it was really nice to see that go full circle, where she was able to say, "Here's an amazing place for you guys to live in if you would like," because things up to that point, we're still sort of working things out.
So that farmhouse came in quite late in the piece. How long have you been there for?
Yeah. Since just after Easter.
Yeah.
And so that's another important thing for people listening to the podcast, is that the opportunities and the needs are still out there, and they're still going to present themselves. And so we need to be prepared for those. That's
And you know, amongst that also is our personal relationship, and you know it's had impacts around that, and also you know the counselling that we've received, not so much of late, but especially early on. Were pretty amazing. Anthony, with her background, actually gave the guy 11 out of 10. Is that
I
right?
did.
That's good. 11 out of 10. That's a great score.
I don't want to go any higher than that. But
He was a trauma-informed counsellor, and for bushfire in particular. That was through work, and the other one was work. Work supported us in terms of a thing called active nature leave for 6 weeks off work. I made an arrangement to go back sort of every now and again part-time, because I felt like I needed to keep the connection there, and I needed to have that sort of purpose. I don't know whether I would do that in hindsight. I'm not sure. It's very hard to know. But that was greatly appreciated, and everyone at work has been very supportive. I would say offered really sensitive care, and a lot of them have obviously experienced fire here themselves before, so they're very aware. And my head is also going, what about all of you? Because there's different types of trauma, and our fire team a lot of them are quite young. And have they had time to work through what they've experienced this summer, autumn period?
So this is the grasshoppers.
Yeah, as well as the grasshoppers. And then I went back probably a little bit too early into what we call the planned burn period, through the Garrawood, where we're doing planned burns, and that was pretty hectic. So I've now stepped out for another 4 weeks just to, with my normal leave, just to
have a holiday,
have a break, slow down, keep
Good.
up with what's going on, to support Anthony in terms of where we're at with things in general, reconnect, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
And Anthony, do you have some final thoughts? Or
I'd like to thank everyone, like in the Pomonal community, Halls Gap, the surrounding towns, for everything. We've been...
Our friends who have sent packages.
Yeah, people sending care packages, people who donated things.
I've now got 30 pairs of underpants. I usually operate on 10 pairs of underpants, so I don't know what to do with
Not
myself.
even, Bill. But I think, just people with their generosity it was very hard to receive at first. I feel like we're better at receiving now.
Yeah.
So just everyone, when I say everyone, you know who you are, and because there'd be a lot of people and also back in our South Gippsland community as well. Not that they're going to be hearing this, but it's just nice to say it out loud as well. But
and to walk out the back door and have a whole lot of firewood there.
and look,
you just haven't had time to do that kind of thing.
yeah, and we're shining a light on some of the things, but there is so much that just
there's a lot.
Goes off the radar.
Yeah.
All the time. Yeah.
It's nuts. And I think the thoughtful thing to be mindful of is that, so as I said earlier, we're the kind of people who are very communal, but we also need our own space to process and to work through things. If you're similar, like if you just need your own space, take it. Take your own space to process, whether it's taking some time away from the community, but come back, and because it's better together. And sometimes we don't have to talk about things. It doesn't have to be about words. It can just be in the sitting with each other.
Yeah.
Or and sitting in a way where it's not overwhelming. Because we're all out of control.
Absolutely.
And this is hopefully not a long process, but we could be all doing this for the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
So we kind of need each other.
So, we're in for the journey.
I would just like to warn you though that If you're going to have a game of bananagrams with Anthony,
Bill's really competitive.
she's a two
and he has rules
2-letter word
that aren't real rules.
2-letter word queen. Like 2-letter words. How
2-letter words.
Not my fault, you don't know 2-letter words.
She's sitting there with her phone typing all the 2-letter words.
It's the Scrabble dictionary. I use it for everyone. Bill doesn't like it.
And her win-loss ratio doesn't improve.
Bananagrams.
No, exactly. I'm very giving.
Yeah, wow. Well, it's been great having you both on. I think this is wonderful, and it's fantastic to have some people on willing to come on and talk who've lost their home. I think that's a really important perspective that we needed to have out there. Yeah, I'll leave you with a thought that you've sort of triggered my thoughts about that. I feel like we live in a world where the news dominates. It's usually negative, and it's hard to look out and think, environmental disasters, war, crime in the streets, it's all negative, but there is a unseen generosity between people that I think completely outmatches any bad in this world. And it's there. We just can't see it. And with that thought, I'll see you next time. Bye. So in keeping with the tradition of this podcast, we're going to finish with a little song. This one goes out to Nardi down at the shop, who apparently was at the same Nick Cave concert as my partner and I, and sitting somewhere behind us. So here's the song by Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds called Slow Horses, which for some reason speaks to me about the fires that happened in Pomonal and our community.